Title: Nightly, they come by the Matriarch's order. I must accept them. Though it breaks my soul in the distant world of Relin, the sky always looked pale green. Thin clouds moved slowly over the black mountains. The air was dry, and the trees stood like stone. It was a quiet world, ruled by the powerful alien race known as the Kareth. The Kareth were tall, with dark skin like polished iron and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They believed in control. They believed that emotions made others weak. For many years, humans had lived under their rule. They were not treated cruelly, but they were never treated as equals. Most humans worked in farms, some worked as healers, and a few were taken into the palace to serve. One of them was a young man named Miran. Miran had been in the palace for 3 years. He was not strong like the guards, nor clever like the scientists, but he had something rare: patience. He spoke only when needed and listened more than he talked. The Kareth noticed this. They believed he was the perfect one to perform a new task. One morning, before the sun had fully risen, two palace guards came to his room. Their faces were calm, their voices quiet. They told Miran to come with them. No reason was given. He followed without question. They took him through the winding halls of the palace. The walls were made of smooth stone and gave off a soft blue light. No one else spoke. After some time, they reached a tall door made of black glass. One guard stepped forward and pressed a hand to the center of the door. It opened slowly. Inside was a round room with no windows. In the center was a low bed, and beside it, a silver chair. Strange patterns ran along the walls, glowing slightly. In the corner stood a table with a bowl of fruit and a flask of water. It was not a prison, but it was not freedom either. A tall Kareth official entered the room. Her name was Vorin, and she served directly under the Matriarch. "You have been chosen," she said. Her voice was smooth, without feeling. "Each night, one of our kind will come to you. They will speak with you, and you will listen. You will not ask why. You will not refuse. This is the Matriarch's will." Miran bowed his head once. "I understand." Vorin nodded. "The first one comes tonight." When she left, the door closed behind her. There was no lock, but Miran knew better than to leave. He sat on the edge of the bed, thinking. He did not know what the Kareth wanted from him, but whatever it was, it had already begun. That night, just as the lights on the walls dimmed, the door opened again. A Kareth stepped inside. She was young by their standards, though still much older than any human. Her long hair was tied back, and her face showed no expression. "My name is Telin," she said. "I have come to begin the process." Miran stood, unsure what to do. Telin walked toward him and held out a small device. It looked like a silver ring with thin wires hanging from it. "This will allow me to view your thoughts," she said. "You must sit and remain still." Miran sat. The device was placed on his head. A cold feeling spread across his scalp. He closed his eyes as the machine hummed softly. Then the images came. His memories began to play, not just in his mind, but through the air around him. They were like shadows of light, barely visible, but they were real. A warm afternoon on Earth, a treehouse he built with his brother, his mother's quiet laughter, the cold night when they were taken. Telin watched without a word. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes moved quickly. The machine hummed louder, then slowly quieted. After a few minutes, the device shut down. She stepped back. "You may sleep now." She turned and walked to the door. But before she left, she paused. Her eyes met Miran's. "You felt pain in your memory," she said, "and yet you smiled in it." Miran nodded once, because it was real. She said nothing more and left the room. Miran lay down on the bed. His body felt weak, but his mind stayed awake. Something was wrong about this process. The Kareth did not care about human memories. Why now? As he stared at the ceiling, he remembered Telin's face. For a moment, she had looked confused, almost sad. The next morning, the guards brought him fresh food. They did not speak. No one told him what would happen next. But deep inside, Miran knew. They would return. Night after night, they would keep coming, not for his words, but for his soul. and he would give it, not because he was forced, but because even broken, the human spirit could still shine. Even in silence, there was strength. Even in pain, there was meaning. He would endure, because that is what humans do. From the story, nightly, they come by the Matriarch's order. I must accept them. Though it breaks my soul, the second night came without sound. The room remained the same. The soft blue walls, the cold floor, the low bed, none of it had changed. Yet Miran knew the world outside was moving. Orders were being given. Plans were in motion. And again, he was at the center of it. As the light dimmed, the door opened. This time, it was not Talon who entered. It was a tall male Careth with silver lines drawn across his cheeks, showing his high rank. He did not speak. He walked directly to Miran and raised the memory device. Miran sat without being told. The device was placed on his head again. The cold wires touched his skin. The hum began, soft at first, then deeper. The memories returned. He saw a small campfire in the woods. He was 10 years old, sitting with his father, who showed him how to light a flame without a match. The sparks, the smoke, the warmth, that all came back. Then another memory, running across a dry field with his sister, the sound of laughter rising in the air. The day before they were taken, the Careth watched without speaking. His face remained still, but his eyes narrowed when the laughter echoed through the memory space. The machine hummed louder, as if trying to take more. When the session ended, the Careth left without a word. The door closed behind him. Miran sat in silence. His head hurt. His body felt heavy. He drank some water, then lay back. But he could not sleep. Something about the way the Careth reacted was strange. They were supposed to be cold, without feeling. Yet during the session, Miran had noticed a change, a flicker in the alien's eyes. A pause when the laughter came, like something had touched a part of him that had long been locked. On the third night, another visitor arrived. She was young, quiet, and nervous. She placed the device gently and began the process. This time, Miran chose not to resist. He let the memories come freely. He remembered a rainstorm. He had been caught without shelter. He remembered dancing in the rain, arms open, eyes closed. He remembered the water running down his face, the wind rushing around him. He remembered the joy. The visitor gasped. She stepped back suddenly, her hand shaking. What was that? She whispered Myra and looked up at her. That was freedom. She stared at him for a long time. Then, without finishing the session, she left. The pattern continued. Each night, a new Careth came. Each one connected to his thoughts, and each one left changed, even if they tried to hide it. Some left quickly. Some stayed longer. Some asked quiet questions. A few said nothing, but their eyes no longer looked cold. Talon returned on the 5th night. She carried the device again, but she did not place it right away. You remember things in color. She said, most minds show shapes and words. Yours show light. Miran nodded. Because I lived those moments. She sat on the chair, holding the device in her hands. Do you know why we do this? She asked. Miran shook his head. I know what you take, but I don't know why. She looked at the wall, as if unsure whether to answer. The Matriarch says human minds are open. You feel more. Your memories are full of power. She believes if we study them, we can control them, or use them. Miran leaned forward slightly. And what do you believe? Talon was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, I believe something is missing in us, something we forgot long ago. She placed the device on the table and stood up. I won't take your memories tonight. She said, I just wanted to see if you were real. Before she left, she turned and added, they fear your mind more than your strength. Miran watched the door close behind her. He felt no pride in what was happening. He felt tired, but he also felt something deeper, something beginning to shift. In the days that followed, he noticed other changes. The guards who brought food paused longer in the room. One asked if the fruit was fresh enough. Another offered a second blanket. These small things would have gone unnoticed before, but now they stood out. Miran understood what was happening. The Careth were changing, slowly, quietly, But it had begun. He thought of Earth. He thought of the millions who had been taken, scattered across the stars. He wondered how many were still fighting, how many were still hoping. He could not reach them. He could not speak to them. But he could still resist in the only way left to him, by remembering. Every night, when the device hummed, he filled the air with memories of joy, sorrow, and love. He gave them beauty, not pain. He gave them light, not fear. And it reached them. Even if they didn't want to feel it, they couldn't avoid it. His soul became a mirror, showing them what they lacked. The Careth wanted to study the human mind. But what they found was something far more dangerous. The human heart. And Miran, the quiet man in the chamber with the soft eyes and tired hands, became their teacher. Without war, without fire, without shouting, only memory. From the story, nightly, they come by the Matriarch's order. I must accept them. Though it breaks my soul. The sixth night was silent. No footsteps came. No voice called his name. The door did not open. Miran sat on the edge of his bed, his eyes fixed on the floor. The silence felt heavier than sound. He was used to the strange routine now. Every night, a Careth would come. The device would hum. The memories would rise. But this time, there was nothing. He waited for hours. He did not move. His heart stayed calm. But his mind grew restless. Morning came. The soft blue lights on the wall brightened. Still, the door remained closed. No food. No visitor. Just silence. Finally, in the early afternoon, the door opened. Two guards entered. Their faces were harder than usual. One of them, taller than the other, spoke in a flat voice. You are not to speak today. You will answer only if asked. Miran nodded. The guards stepped aside, and a senior Careth official entered the room. He wore a long dark robe, with sharp lines on his face. His name was Thorn, a close advisor to the Matriarch. Thorn looked round the room, then stared at Miran. Where is the one who came last night? He asked. Miran shook his head. No one came. Thorn narrowed his eyes. You lie. I waited, Miran replied. The door did not open. Thorn stepped closer. Her name was Rinnel. She was assigned to you. She never returned to her post. Miran blinked slowly. Then something must have happened. Thorn stared at him for a long time, then gave a short nod to the guards. They left with him. The door closed once again. Miran sat back down, thinking, Rinnel. He remembered her. She was the quiet one who had asked him what freedom felt like. The one who gasped when she saw the memory of rain. She had left early that night. Maybe too early. Now she was missing. That evening, the door opened once again. This time, it was Tellen. She stepped in quickly and closed the door behind her. She did not bring the memory device. Her eyes looked sharp but worried. I only have a few minutes, she said. Miran stood. What happened to Rinnel? She left the palace, Tellen replied. Without permission. Miran was silent. She was different after she visited you, Tellen continued. Something changed in her. She started asking questions. She wanted to understand more about your kind. Where did she go? Tellen looked down. We don't know yet, but they blame you. I said nothing to her, Miran said softly. Tellen nodded. I believe you, but the others don't. She walked across the room and sat on the chair. I came because I needed to ask you something, she said. Why don't you resist? Miran looked at her. Because resistance is not always a weapon. She tilted her head slightly. Then what is it? It is a memory that does not fade, he said. It is a seed that grows in silence. Tellen looked at him for a long time. You confuse them. You confuse me. I'm just a man who remembers, he replied. A faint smile appeared on her face, but it vanished quickly. I shouldn't stay long, she said. They already watched me more than before. She walked to the door, but before leaving, she turned back. If something happens to me, she said, remember that not all Careth serve the Matriarch without thought. Then she left. That night, Miran did not sleep. He sat near the corner, back against the wall, watching the door. Thoughts moved through his mind like quiet waves. Someone had broken the pattern. Rinnel had walked away from her duty. Tellen had returned. Without orders. The silence between their visits was filled with tension now. The next morning, a group of guards entered. They said nothing, only placed a new device in the room. It looked different, thicker wires, glowing lines across its surface. Miran stared at it that night. The device was used by a new visitor, a cold-faced Careth with no name. The session felt harsh. The hum of the machine grew louder than usual. The memories were pulled faster, harder. Miran felt his head spinning. When the visitor left, Miran collapsed on the bed, gasping for breath. But still, his soul held firm. The next day passed slowly. The air in the room felt heavy. The food was the same, the water clean. But something had changed. At sunset, the door opened once more. Tellen stood there again. She looked tired. "I came without permission," she said. "But I had to see you." Miran stood slowly. "Are you in danger?" "Not yet," she replied. "But they have started to speak of erasing your memory." He was quiet for a long time. "If they erase it," he said, "they erase your own people's chance to feel." She stepped closer. "I know." Tellen opened her hand and revealed a small piece of folded cloth. Inside was a tiny metal strip, a message chip. "If something happens to me, hide this," she whispered. "It has the truth about the Matriarch's plans, about the memory harvest." Miran took it without a word and hid it under the corner of the bed. Tellen turned to leave. "Will I see you again?" he asked. She paused at the door. "Yes," she said, "if I can." Then she was gone. Miran looked at the bed. He had no weapons, no army, no voice outside these walls. But now he had a secret, and secrets, when shared at the right moment, could change everything. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "I am not alone." From the story, nightly, they come by the Matriarch's order. I must accept them. Though it breaks my soul, there inside the chamber felt colder than before. The soft blue lights on the walls no longer gave comfort. Miran sat quietly, hands resting on his knees. His eyes remained steady, but his heart carried the weight of what was coming. He now had a secret message chip hidden beneath the bed, given to him by Tellen. She had warned him about the plan to erase his memory. He had only one thought in his mind. He must not forget. If he forgot, all that he had shared with the Careth would vanish. The quiet change that had begun in their hearts would fade. Later that day, the guards returned. This time they brought a different machine. It had a thick base, bright metal arms, and a seat with straps. Miran had never seen it before. One of the guards spoke. "You will sit. The cleansing will begin." Miran did not resist. He walked calmly toward the machine and sat down. The straps were fastened around his wrists and ankles. A round piece of metal was placed on his temple. The device began to hum. A Careth technician entered and adjusted the settings. He did not speak to Miran. His eyes were cold. Miran closed his eyes. The machine tried to reach into his mind. It tried to pull the memories and wash them away. The ones of his family, the fields, the rain, the laughter. But something inside Miran fought back. His thoughts began to slow, not from fear, but from focus. He reached deep into himself, holding on to one single image, his sister's face, smiling under a bright sun. It became his anchor. The machine hummed louder. Sparks flashed across the wires. The technician frowned. Something was wrong. The device could not push through. Miran's soul had built a wall. After 20 minutes, the machine stopped. The technician looked confused. "He is resisting," he said. "His memory threads are not breaking. They are growing stronger." The guards exchanged glances. The technician stepped away. "We must report to the Matriarch." They left the chamber in silence. Miran remained seated. His body was tired, but his mind was still clear. He had protected his memories. And more than that, he had proved something the human soul could resist. Machines. That night, no visitor came. The chamber remained quiet. But Miran sensed change outside the walls. 2 mornings later, Tellen returned. Her face looked different, not fearful, not tense. There was something deeper in her eyes. She stepped inside quickly and closed the door. "I heard what happened," she said. They tried to wipe your mind. Miran nodded. They failed. Talon's hands were shaking. The technician said your memories fought back. That's not possible. Not even our strongest minds can do that. Miran stood slowly. It's not strength. It's will. Talon stared at him. I believe you. Others will too. She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a folded cloth. Inside was another chip. This contains part of our communication records, she said. I found it in the Matriarch's archive. It shows that she never planned to share peace. She only wanted control. Miran took the chip and hid it beside the first. Talon leaned closer. There are others like me. Quiet ones. Watching. Waiting. Miran asked, will they act? They need something to follow. She replied, they need someone. Miran looked at the walls. They will not follow a worker. They will follow a soul that cannot be broken. Talon said softly. The door opened suddenly. Both turned toward it. A guard stood outside, but he did not enter. He spoke without emotion. The matriarch has summoned Talon. She nodded and left. Miran sat back on his bed. Now he knew the truth. Talon was not the only one. Others were waking up, slowly, silently, and they needed something to believe in. The next few days passed without visits. The guards came only to deliver food. No machine was used again. No memory device returned. But Miran kept his strength. He walked in slow circles each morning. He sang quiet songs to himself, songs from his childhood, songs he thought he had forgotten. On the 5th day, a new guard brought food. He was younger than the others. His hands trembled slightly as he placed the tray down. Miran looked up. Their eyes met for a moment. The guard spoke in a whisper. She was taken to the high chamber. They say she spoke against the matriarch. Miran's heart sank. Talon had taken the risk. Now she was facing the punishment. The guard leaned closer. There are others. We're with her. He left quickly. Miran sat still. The quiet rebellion had started. It was not loud. It was not violent. It was born of feeling, of memory, of truth. He stood and walked to the wall. He placed his hand against the cold stone and whispered a name. Talon. Then he began to speak, not in shouts, not in anger, but in soft, steady words. He told the story of a small boy in a treehouse, of a sister who sang in the rain, of a mother's voice in the dark. He spoke into the air, into the silence, knowing that some way, somehow, the words would find their way out. That night, someone slipped a small cloth under the door. Inside it was a hand-drawn mark, a circle with a line across it, a sign of unity, a sign of those who now stood against the matriarch in silence. Miran smiled. The soul's resistance had begun, and it would not stop. The days moved slowly inside the stone-walled chamber, but Miran felt something new in the silence. It was not fear. It was not sadness. It was change, like the soft wind that comes before a storm. It moved without sound but brought a strong feeling. The mark left under his door a circle with alignment. Others were waking. The message was clear. The quiet rebellion had begun. Each day, Miran waited. He kept his mind sharp. He walked across the room in slow steps, repeating the names of the people he once knew. He whispered old songs. He thought of Talon, and he hoped she was alive. On the 4th morning, a small piece of bread on his tray held something inside. A folded note, written in simple Kareth script. She is alive. They move her to the east wing. She waits. There was no name on the note, no other words. But it was enough. Miran's heart felt stronger. He knew Talon had not given up. He knew she had not been broken. That night, the door opened. A new Kareth visitor entered. He looked young and calm. His voice was soft. I am here to learn. He said, not to take. Miran studied him. Then sit. The visitor sat on the floor instead of the chair. He placed the memory device on the table without touching it. I've seen what they hide. He whispered, your memories are not weakness. They are light, and we have lived long in shadow. Miran nodded slowly. Why are you here? The young Kareth smiled faintly. Because I believe in what I felt when I touched your memories, and I'm not alone. He pulled out a small piece of cloth from his coat. The same mark, a circle, with a line, the sign of the hidden ones. There are 20 of us inside the palace, he said. More outside. We speak carefully. We move slowly. But we are ready. Miran leaned forward. What do you want me to do? The visitor looked serious. We want your voice, your memory, your truth. I have no army, Miran said. You don't need one, the visitor replied. You have already changed us. Miran paused. Then, he said, I will do what I can. The next day, the lights in the hallway dimmed for a moment. It was short, only a second, but it was a signal, a code, another piece of the puzzle. Later, a guard brought water and placed a folded cloth under the cup. Miran waited until the door closed before opening it. Inside were more messages, names, rooms, schedules. The rebels were everywhere, in the kitchen, in the archives, among the servants and guards. That night, Talon's name was on the list again. She would return. Miran cleaned his chamber as best as he could. He folded his blanket. He washed his face. He wanted to be ready. When the door opened after sunset, she stood there. Her face was thinner, her eyes more tired, but her spirit was still strong. She stepped inside, closed the door, and they looked at each other without speaking for a moment. I knew you were alive, he said at last. They moved me, she replied. Questioned me, watched me. But I did not break. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. It's time. The plan is ready. The rebels wait for your word. Miran looked down at his hands. I never thought I would lead anyone. You don't need to lead with commands, she said. You lead with your soul. They sat on the floor. Talon explained the plan. At nightfall, when the palace entered low power mode, the rebels would move. They would disable the mine machines, lock the guards inside the lower halls, and take control of the communication tower. But they needed Miran to do one thing: reach the old memory chamber and connect to the network. From there, his memories could be shared across the palace, a wave of truth, a flood of emotion. It would reach every Kareth, even those who still served the Matriarch. Miran agreed. At midnight, the door opened again. 2 guards entered, but they were rebels. One gave Miran a dark cloak. The other handed him a small tool to unlock doors. They moved fast and quiet through the empty halls. Talon led them, guiding through hidden paths and service routes. The lights flickered low. No alarms, no eyes watching. They reached the memory chamber. The room was cold and dark, filled with machines. In the center stood the main chair with the large connection wires. Miran sat. Talon activated the system. The wires touched his skin. The chamber filled with a low hum. Think of the strongest memory, Talon said. Miran closed his eyes. He remembered standing in a green field, a soft wind moving across the grass. He remembered his sister running toward him, holding a flower. He remembered his mother's hands, fixing his clothes before school. He remembered laughter, sadness, joy, love, and pain. And he shared it all. The machines glowed brighter. The memory chamber lit up. The emotion spread through the network like fire through dry leaves, across the palace. Kareth froze in place. They felt things they had never felt. A guard dropped his weapon. A scientist began to cry. A servant fell to her knees, whispering an old song she never knew she knew. In the high tower, the matriarch rose from her seat. What is happening? She demanded. No one answered. Back in the memory chamber, the machine slowed. Miran opened his eyes. It is done, Talon said. But Miran could still feel the memory moving, as if it had a life of its own. The guards outside shouted. Heavy footsteps echoed. The rebels were being found. It's time to leave, Talon said. But Miran shook his head. I will stay. You'll be caught, she said. They can catch my body, Miran replied. But they can't catch the truth. It's already in them. Talon looked at him, eyes wide with emotion. Then she turned and ran. Miran sat in the center of the chamber, alone but not afraid. The soul had spoken, and the walls of silence were beginning to fall. From the story, nightly, they come by the matriarch's order. I must accept them. Though it breaks my soul, the memory chamber stood silent after the wave passed through. Its walls no longer hummed with machines, but with something deeper feeling. The lights had dimmed, but the message had been sent. It was already in their minds, and nothing could erase it. Miran sat in the center chair, still connected to the memory device. His face looked tired, but his eyes held calm. He had given everything he could, not through battle, but through memory. His truth now lived in others. Outside the chamber, the palace was changing. Kareth guards walked the halls with confused faces. Some had dropped their weapons and sat against the walls, holding their heads. Others stared out windows, lost in thought. The emotions they had taken from Miran were now inside them, moving freely. They felt warmth. They felt regret. They felt longing. In the east wing, Talon led a group of rebels through a narrow passage. She held a map in one hand and a small light in the other. "We go to the communication tower," she whispered. "We need to speak to the whole city." Behind her, rebels moved quickly. Some were Kareth, others human workers who had quietly joined the cause. Their steps were soft but sure. They knew this was the moment they had waited for. As they reached the base of the tower, they found the main door locked. Talon signaled to one of the rebels, who quickly used a stolen access key. The door clicked open. Inside, the tower was mostly empty. The guards who once protected it had either fled or collapsed after the memory wave. Talon climbed to the top. She reached the central console and activated the public voice system. Her hand shook as she pressed the button. "This is Talon of the Matriarch's court," she said, her voice steady. "I speak not as a servant, but as someone who has felt the truth." She paused and looked out the window. The sky was pale and quiet. "You were told the humans were weak," she continued. "You were told they had nothing to offer but labor and silence. But that is not true." She placed her hand on the console. "They gave us memory. They gave us light. They gave us something we had lost feeling. And I choose to follow that light." Her voice echoed through the city. Every speaker in the palace carried her words. Every Kareth heard them. In the Matriarch's throne room, her advisors stood in silence. Some looked down. Others looked at one another with uncertain eyes. The Matriarch stood slowly from her throne. "Find the human," she ordered. And this, but few moved. Fear had lost its hold. In the memory chamber, Miran removed the wires from his head and stood. His legs were weak, but he stayed balanced. The door opened. 3 guards entered. They stared at him. "You started this," one said. Miran didn't speak. "You made us feel things." Another whispered. "I remember the stars above my first training camp. I remember my mother's voice." The third stepped closer. "I don't know if I can go back," he said. "You don't need to," Miran replied. "You just need to go forward with truth." The guards stepped aside. Miran walked past them. He moved through the palace slowly. Some bowed their heads as he passed. Others stared with wonder. No one stopped him. Outside the palace, people were gathering, Kareth citizens and human. Workers stood together in silence. They looked up toward the communication tower. They had heard Talon's message. They had felt the change. Talon met Miran at the base of the tower. "They want to see you," she said. Miran looked unsure. "I'm just one man," he said. "You're the man who showed us what it means to feel again," Talon replied. She led him up the steps of the tower. From the top, Miran looked down at the crowd. Hundreds stood together. No shouting, no anger, just hope. He raised his hand. "I came here as a servant," he said. "I was told to be silent, to sit, to give my memories without question. I did." He paused. "But in giving, I shared something they didn't expect. I shared love. I shared pain. I shared the truth of being human." He looked toward the palace. "I did not fight with weapons. I did not break walls. I broke silence." The crowd listened without moving. "I'm not better than anyone here," Miran said. "I only remembered, and now you do too." At that moment, the large door of the palace opened. The matriarch stepped out. Her dark robes moved with the wind. Her face showed no emotion. She walked toward the tower, followed by her most loyal guards. The crowd moved back as she approached. Miran stood at the top. Talon stood beside him. The matriarch looked up. You have turned my people against me, she said. I didn't turn them, Miran replied. They turned towards something they had forgotten. The matriarch raised her hand. But her guards did not move. She looked around. Faces that once bowed now stood tall. Eyes that once feared her now looked through her. She lowered her hand. What now? She asked. Miran looked out at the people. You listen, he said. The matriarch stood still for a long time. Then she turned and walked back into the palace. No one followed. The rebellion was not one with violence. It was one with feeling, with memories, with truth. The hall had fallen, not with fire, but with light, and in that light, something new began to grow. The palace was no longer a place of silence. The heavy quiet had been replaced by whispers and soft voices. The walls that once held fear now held hope. The night that once brought strangers to take memories now brought friends who shared stories. Miran stood outside the palace, looking at the first rays of dawn breaking over the mountains. The pale green sky was slowly changing to warm orange and pink. It was the color of a new beginning. Tellen stood beside him. Her eyes, once tired, now shone with light. We have come far, she said quietly. Miran nodded. But the journey is only beginning. The matriarch had stepped down from power. She no longer ruled with silence or fear. The people had spoken with their hearts, and the old ways were ending. A council was forming. Humans and Kerth would sit together to build a new future. It was not perfect. There were still wounds to heal and pain to face. But it was real. Miran remembered the nights in the chamber. The memories shared, the pain endured, the loneliness. All of it had led to this moment. One morning, as the sun rose higher, a young Kerth approached Miran. He held out a small flower, blue and glowing softly. For you, the young one said. Miran took it with a smile. It is from the new gardens. The young Kerth explained. A symbol of peace. Miran looked at the flower and then at the sky. Peace is not something we find. He said, it is something we grow. The days that followed were filled with work. The old memory machines were dismantled. The palace doors were open to all. Children laughed in the gardens, and the songs of both humans and Kerth filled the air. Miran spent time walking through the city. People came to speak with him. They shared stories of hope and dreams for the future. One evening, as the stars began to shine, Miran sat by a quiet river. Tellen joined him, holding a small book of poems. They told us we could not feel, she said, reading softly. But feeling is what makes us strong. Miran smiled. We learned that together. They sat in silence, watching the water flow. The memories that once caused pain now brought strength. The past was not forgotten, but it no longer controlled them. In the years to come, Miran became a teacher. He taught children about courage, hope, and the power of memory. He told them stories from Earth, from the stars, and from the hearts of those who dared to dream. The Kerth learned to listen. The humans learned to trust. Together, they built a world where no one was forced to hide their soul. And every night, when the stars shone bright, Miran looked up and remembered. He remembered the nights they came. The nights he was broken. The nights he chose to stand. And he smiled, knowing that the soul could never be taken. It was free. Always free.